Hey everyone, Happy New Year 2025 and welcome back to the Path to Purpose podcast. My name is Kieran Williams and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the difference between intentions and expectations. Now, what does this really mean? Well, simply, an intention is when you set out to do something and have a focus on it. It's something that comes from within you and you set a focus on it to bring into reality no matter what gets in your way. It's often an independent task because intention comes from within. It's in the name when it says intention. Whereas expectation is the opposite because it's external, hence the X part of the word external in the name, or at least that's how I see it anyway, and I'll explain how. Expectation means that you rely on someone or something else to do a task or to focus on something that is essentially not in your control. So expectation requires a lot of patience or waiting, a lot of hoping, and it can sometimes lead to disappointment if the person doesn't follow through with what they're saying they're going to do, or if the plan doesn't work out how you thought it would. But the reason I was inspired to make an episode about this today is because I was reflecting a lot on how I first started my journey traveling the world. And I'll never forget in 2018 on New Year's Eve, which is exactly 7 years ago. My gosh. Honestly, time just goes so quickly. But anyway, it was 7 years ago that I was at work in my old job, doing a night shift. And I was sitting there trying to decide what direction I wanted to go next with my life. And I've always, at this point, been interested in the idea of traveling. But I always expected that someone would have to come with me to travel in order for it to happen, because I didn't believe I could go and do it independently. I didn't want to go on my own, and I was too scared to, go on my own and do something completely solo. It was just, I at the time couldn't open my mind up to that. However, after hours of sitting there alone at my job, I finally plucked up the courage and came to the conclusion that I would book my first solo trip for 2 weeks later in January in 2019. And I actually remember when this happened because I could hear the fireworks outside. I was sitting there at my desk. I could hear the fireworks. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, like another year's gone by. And I really want to do this. And the only way it's going to happen now without having to wait for someone else to be free to come with me is if I set out my intention and just book it. So I spent that whole night on Airbnb, Booking.com, on EasyJet's website, on just doing as much research as I could, just trying to figure out where I wanted to go and how long for, and just all the things at the time that now to me are very normal things to do. It was all for the first time, and I was so nervous doing it, but it was just that kind of, at the time, the boost of having that intention, having that knowing that it was what I wanted to do. So that's what I did, and I booked my first flight to Innsbruck in Austria, in the beautiful snowy Alps of the Tyrol mountains, and off I went. It was a lot of inner conflict that I was going through myself to really subconsciously see the difference between doing something when someone else was ready to do it or doing something when I was ready to do it, which is what brought me to make this podcast episode today about intentions and expectations. So at the time, my expectation was that someone would have to come with me, and then I wouldn't have to travel alone. I would be able to wait for a friend to be free, to be available, and to have the time to travel somewhere in the world with me. That was my expectation. However, after a lot of time of thinking, it allowed me to come to the conclusion that I didn't actually need to wait for anyone else. My intention was to travel, to experience new things, to see new cultures, to try new foods, and to go and take photos, to just do my thing. And for that, I knew that I could do it on my own. No matter how scary it was, I could do it on my own. And the only person I could rely on fully to do that was myself. So I decided to focus more on the intention. Expectations are never reliable, but if you yourself have an intention to do something, all you need to do is deal with any fears that are revolving around the idea, and you'll be absolutely fine. So going away in 2019 was genuinely the best thing I could have ever done for myself. I immediately got the bug to go and travel and go to different countries all the time. And actually, throughout 2019, I travelled to a different country every single month for that year. And after January, I made it my goal to go away and see somewhere new every single month. And this was all while working in a full-time job at the time. So I just went away for little 4 or 5 day trips whenever I could, and it was the best way to utilize my time and my money. It was money well spent, and it was the best time of my life. That really sent me in the direction that I'm going on today, which is to travel and experience more of the world while teaching people how to be their most authentic self and showing them how travel can really open up your mind and soul in ways that you can never imagine. And I always think back to this time when I set myself that intention of going away, and I always show gratitude to myself for having the courage to go ahead with that decision, because now it's second nature to me to be able to go and do these things. And every trip I did that year, apart from a couple of them, were solo trips. So this episode is really just about showing awareness to intentions and expectations. It's more about not being disappointed by your expectations not going to plan, but realizing your own power and reminding yourself that if you have the intention to do something, you can still do it. And there is another way around it. There always is. However that may be for you, whether it's while traveling or with any other aspect of your life, an expectation that doesn't work out is not the end. And I hope that makes sense. But this is something that came to me today that I really felt the need to share with you all. I am going to leave this episode here today, but I just wanted to add on another note that I've got some very exciting projects lined up this year that I will look forward to sharing with you all in this podcast at some point very soon, so stay tuned for that. And additionally, if there's anything you would like to hear from me on my podcast in the future, or anything you want to know about me, feel free to drop me a message on Instagram on my page at Kieran Visuals, or you can directly leave me a message in the Q&A box on this podcast. I hope you're all having an amazing start to the new year, and that you're focusing on all your goals and working on becoming the best version of yourself while walking on this journey of life, or should I say, your path to purpose. So as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you all in the next episode.